Yo, what's happening, everybody? It's your boy Erskmac, the mad scientist, and this is Pro Wrestling Talk live Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope you guys having an awesome week. Man, listen, it's Valentine's Day week, y'all. So if you got a significant other, you might want to get on the good foot. You know, some flowers, some candy, teddy bears, and all that stuff. And I mean, there's some last minute stuff happening. So, you know, as far as where you're male or female and you're looking for stuff for your significant other, you might want to go to your nearest Target, your Walmart, or whatever. You need to go ahead and handle that business before you want to have a mad significant other, because Valentine's Day is a, I mean, listen, it's a materialistic holiday, all right? But, there's some people that take it real serious, and you should take it as serious as your significant other. So you might want to get on the good foot when it comes to that. But tonight is Tuesday night. This is Pro Wrestling Talk Live, where we talk about the week's news, or this past week's news, and upcoming events and everything else in between, and my thoughts and opinions on what's going on in the wrestling world. Now, other than the press conference, because we got to talk about that press conference for Cody Rhodes, but that's later down the line. But there's some news that actually, in my opinion, kind of overshadowed that. And I understand that WrestleMania is the biggest event that WWE has. It is the flagship pay-per-view event. All right. And they condensed it. Well, they didn't say condensed it. They expanded to 2 nights because there were so many matches like put into one night. So by the time you get to the main event, you already winded, you already exhausted, you already let out too much energy. So by the time the main event comes, you know, it's not that you're uninterested. It's just that you don't have the energy to cheer or boo or do whatever. So they expanded it over to 2 nights. So COVID actually helped them out with that a little bit. So they start to think a little bit more logically in that sense. So not only you got night 1, but you got night 2 of WrestleMania. Now, but before we get into that, we got to talk about TNA Wrestling. All right. Over the past few days, TNA Wrestling has been in the news when it comes to one Scott D'More, former TNA president. Anthem relieved him of his duties, and that honestly set the TNA wrestling world on fire. I mean, the pro wrestling world on fire. Scott D'More, how do you fumble that bag? Like, what were you thinking? But before I even get on my soapbox when it comes to that, according to Fightful Select, despite the shocking nature of D'More's departure, D'More himself knew his days were numbered, as Anthem had been preparing to fire him a month before he was let go. D'More remained steadfast in trying to remain with the promotion, while Anthem was steadfast in wanting to move on, while also presenting the parting of the ways as a mutual departure, quote unquote, something D'More resisted. Even as his departure became more and more likely, D'More maintained correspondence with Anthem and helped incoming president Anthony Saccone in transitioning into the role. Despite that, D'More never gave up on trying to remain with TNA. Now, leading to him attempting to buy the promotion, with Anthem rejecting his offer, and it was confirmed that D'More's attempts to buy TNA came before the firing was publicly known, not before D'More became aware. Now, regarding reports that D'More and Anthem clashed over increasing the TNA's budget, or D'More's attempts to sign WWE star Braun Strowman during 2021, it was confirmed that TNA and Strowman had talks, but it wasn't 7 figures as to believe. Let me tell you something. When you got an individual that want to stay with your promotion, when you have an individual that everybody, not just one person, not just 2 persons, but everyone in that locker room loves that man. When you got a guy that people was going to resign with the promotion mainly because of him, and you fire that dude, what the hell are you thinking? Now, I mean, unless there's something that we don't know, unless there's some allegations that's going to surface soon, or whatever the case may be, and I would not put that on Scott D'More. But as it stands, we don't know that information. Okay? But the only thing we know is, like, a very good individual was let go, and the TNA talent is upset about it. I mean, didn't Jordan Grace like entered the Royal Rumble this year? Like, wasn't that Scott D'More's doing? Like him working back and forth with that? Like, wasn't Moose re-signing with TNA is because of Scott D'More? Like, this man brought in TNA from Impact, because before it was Impact Wrestling. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert in TNA wrestling. I'm not going to pretend that. You know, I haven't watched TNA since the days of Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Gail Kim, Awesome Kong, The Beautiful People with Angelina Love, Madison Rain, Velvet Sky, ODB. You know, I know a few things. I know a few things about TNA wrestling. Kurt Angle. Now, I see a lot of people call him Perk Angle, but listen, this is peak Angle. You understand? Peak Kurt Angle. I feel like Kurt Angle did his best work in TNA wrestling. Not WWE, but I feel like he did his best work in TNA wrestling. And that's the TNA that I remember. The TNA that I remember, it was a groundswell, and it was slowly growing. And I mean, there was a fumbling of the funds with Dixie Carter, and things went downhill from there. I mean, the moment that Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan showed up, that kind of killed the vibe right there, man. Flew too close to the sun. You know, to burn the wings too fast. Because had it been slow and steady, TNA, honestly, TNA and old Ring of Honor will be what AEW is today. But Impact Wrestling still stayed around. And mainly because of the reason of that is Scott D'More. I mean, he'd been steadfast with Impact Wrestling. And then he announced TNA coming back this year. And then you bring in Nick Nemeth, formerly Dolph Ziggler. And before all that, he advertised like there's a big signing, the biggest signing that we ever had. And he went on Busted Open and everything else in between. Like, TNA is in his veins. And you fire that dude. Like, do you want to torpedo this promotion? If you really wanted to do this, why not sell TNA to Scott D'More? Because he could damn sure do better without you, Anthem. I'm like, you got Access TV. I don't know who has Access TV. Okay? And cable is slowly dying. Yeah, it's dying a slow death. You understand? Because now it's on YouTube and we watch it on YouTube. And honestly and truly, I have been watching some TNA matches. Jordan Grace is like my all-time favorite. Like, she's definitely my female TNA talent for that promotion. But if you're looking for her to resign after this contract, you can think again, Anthem. She's going to either AEW or WWE. Moose is out of there. Most of your talent that believes in Scott D'More, they are dipping. So you possibly single-handedly killed TNA. Whatever momentum you had, you killed it. Unless you know something that the public don't know. Unless you know something. But guess what? We don't know that. And the only thing we know is you fired a very good person in Scott D'More. When I mean no drama in that locker room, zero drama in that locker room, and you let that go. All that turmoil you just caused. Like, okay, yeah, we knew about it, but to us, the public, I mean, allegedly with the wrestlers, they didn't know either. And Scott, even through all that, Scott D'More wanted to stay. Even, like training, grooming the next guy up, long as he stayed in TNA. Like, you got that kind of loyalty and you want to get rid of that? Like, what are you planning on doing with TNA that Scott D'More didn't do? All he asked for is a bigger budget so he could bring in bigger talent, maybe bigger venues, everything else in between. But why didn't you sell TNA to this man? Why couldn't you do that for him? Because everybody loves Scott D'More. Now, I will say this. The one thing I will say is, now that Scott D'More is no longer with TNA, I'm talking to you, Tony Khan. This is one of the biggest pickups you could ever get in wrestling. Don't let that man go to WWE. Let me say this. I do not hate WWE. I watch both products. I have said this ad nauseum. But if I'm Tony Khan, I'm calling Scott. I'm calling Scott and give him the reins in that women's locker room, because look what he did with the TNA women's locker room, the TNA knockouts. Look what she did. Look what he did with that. And on top of that, give him even more duties. Have him aid in running Ring of Honor. Because guess who's coming? Because if you got Scott D'More, that is your biggest signing. It's not Okada. It's not Mercedes Moné. It's Scott D'More. Because if you get Scott D'More, everybody else is going to follow him. Jordan Grace is coming to AEW. Moose is coming to AEW. Nick Nemeth coming to AEW, because guess what? It's a safe space. It's a safer environment. It's not unknown territory. If you got Scott D'More there, and on top of all that, Scott D'More leaves harmony in the locker room. That means Tony Khan don't have to have his hands in every pot. It's no offense to Tony Khan, because I feel like he's doing a good job. You know, he'd be on the internet and stuff like that, on Twitter and everything else in between. I get all that, but you know, he's getting more eyes on the product. He's attempting to get more eyes on the product. I fully understand where he's coming from with that. But you need to get Scott D'More. You need to call him. You got more money. Because the amount of money that you're willing to pay Scott D'More, it won't be the amount of money that WWE is willing to pay Scott D'More. It won't be. It won't be. TKO, they got a limit on this budget situation. You know what I'm saying? They might have money, but they ain't gonna spend that kind of money. You know what I mean? They got budget and everything else in between. Tony Khan, this is your time to get Scott D'More, because again, imagine Scott D'More in that women's locker room. Imagine Scott D'More doing your stories and everything else with AEW. Imagine Scott D'More with the budget that AEW has. We're talking a juggernaut. You understand? Juggernaut. And I mean, don't get me wrong. AEW is competition at the WWE. Anybody that think otherwise is stupid. Like, if you don't think AEW is competition for WWE, you are sadly mistaken. You are being blind. Okay? Because if they weren't competition, why did they get Jade Cargill and all of her branding? Because let it be known that Jade Cargill tried out for WWE and they said no. She went to AEW, became undefeated. The only match that she lost was her very last match to drop the title to Chris Statlander. That was it. But they got her and the branding. Why you think they got Cody Rhodes and all of his branding? Everything else in between. Come on now. Why you think they got CM Punk again? Because they wouldn't even giving CM Punk a second look. But the minute he went to AEW, oh shit, we need to get him back. Oh, their AEW is competition. If you think otherwise, you're stupid. There's no other way around it. But Scott D'More, Tony Khan, you need to call Scott D'More. Because if you're creating this safe environment, as you say, and you're building up the women's roster, because you are definitely building up that women's roster. I've seen more women matches, like way more than I did last year, and I applaud that. I look forward to those women's matches because these women can kill it. And you got Mercedes Moné on the way. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But Scott D'More, I hats off to you. You're doing a phenomenal job with Impact Wrestling and TNA. I have heard zero negative things about you. From any wrestler that have talked to you or gotten advice from you or anything else in between, it's nothing but positive things. And for Anthem to do that to you, yeah, they're dumb as a box of rocks. And honestly, karma's a bitch. And hopefully they know what they're doing, because now they got talent on their ass. Like, you better pay us and treat us correctly. Otherwise, when this contract is up, we are out this bitch. So we'll see. We'll see. Now, going on to Cody Rhodes, man. We talk about this press conference, man. This press conference has been talked about like all over the world, and especially with the pivot. But let's address what's going on with the press conference. It all started before that with The Rock on the Pat McAfee show, calling Cody fans Cody crybabies, because it was all over the internet, and it was hashtag We Want Cody all week long. You know what I mean? It was trending. It was number one for a couple of days, and then it dropped down, but it's still in the trending number. And it created a groundswell to the point that The Rock has to acknowledge it. So he went on the Pat McAfee show. He was like, listen, these are Cody crybabies. Just sit your bitch ass down and enjoy the show. And that was Hollywood Rock talking. And we only got a little snippet of Hollywood Rock before, he was defeated by Stone Cold Steve Austin to go off to Hollywood. We only got a little bit. We only got a little bit of Hollywood Rock. And that Hollywood Rock is very entertaining. And this is the Rock that we're actually getting. So excited about that. But let's fast forward to the press conference. So he comes out to the press conference, mixed crowd reaction, everything else, in between. And G Signature says that that is Dwayne Johnson. That is Dwayne Johnson talking. But shout out to G Signature. So get to the press conference. He acknowledges the bloodline, the family tree. And obviously you see Naomi Fatu and everybody else. And then you get the handshake between him and his cousin. And then Cody comes out like, yo, this is bullshit. And from there, they carried on with the promo. And then at that point, once he said that the High Chief will be ashamed of them, The Rock intervenes, slaps Cody in the face, which causes this controversy. And let's dissect this for a second. When you on stage, there's one person like sitting in the background, and that's Seth Rollins. He ain't said a word. Ain't said a word until that slap happened. And I mean, if you really want to get down to the nooks and crannies of it, Seth is, is being portrayed as, I wouldn't say like a bitch, but just a background character. You are the world heavyweight champion. You are the workhorse champion. And I know you're supposed to be on stage, but the way, I mean, you could have given them more lines. I mean, of course you defend Cody, and I get all that. But that was my gripe with that particular scene. My other gripe, G just said he don't want to get slapped. He don't want to get slapped either. I mean, I don't think Seth Rollins actually allowed himself to be slapped like that. But he like, listen, he slapped Cody. He about to slap my ass. But when you go backstage, when Rock was talking to Triple H and, they was having that conversation, the one thing I didn't like was Roman Reigns standing behind The Rock. Like, bro, you are the tribal chief, right? Like, you've been going strong for 2-3+ years as the champion. You never stood behind anyone, but you stood behind him like you was a little brother, and it shouldn't be that way. What it should have been was a side-by-side kind of situation, but Rock just looked like the big brother, and Roman just looked like, yeah, what my big brother said. That kind of thing. I didn't like that. I didn't like that portrayal. They could have done that a little bit better. Excuse me. But now G Signature says, I'm thinking they're playing into The Rock's ranking in their actual family history. Yes, because now it's being said, not by WWE, but other people saying that, he's the High Chief. And, and Roman is the Tribal Chief. But we'll see. Now, like I said last week, with WWE, they pivoted with this. And I know that's the word people are using. This was not the original plan. And I'm going to break this down. Okay? Their plan was to put The Rock there. Fans didn't like it. They shitted on it. 600,000 plus dislikes on YouTube. And they had to acknowledge that. And they had to pivot and get somehow, some way, get Cody back into the mix again to finish the story. And this was a mistake. It wasn't Triple H's decision, but Rock is on the board. He's at a higher hierarchy than Nick Khan and Triple H. I think he's like number 4. I broke down the hierarchy still, but they had to fix the situation. And I'm going to break that down further. Last year, people was upset that Cody lost at WrestleMania, right? But WWE didn't give a shit about your feelings because guess what? You already paid a ticket. You already sat down and watched Peacock and watched WrestleMania in its entirety. They already got your retention. They already got your viewership. That shit don't matter to them no more. WrestleMania is done. It's over with. We got your money. We out of here. We done. So G Sinister said, I may be in a minority, but I believe this is plan number 3. Yeah, they had to pivot a few times. All because of one bad decision. And it was a horrible decision. This is a la WrestleMania 30, right, with Daniel Bryan. I mean, if I remember correctly, I don't think Daniel Bryan was in the Royal Rumble, and Vince thought it was a better idea to have Batista and Randy Orton in the main event until the fans shitted on it, and they had to somehow finagle that way to put Daniel Bryan in there because that's what the fan base wanted. So, and plan number 3, he mean by losing CM Punk and Brock. Now, from what reports were saying, and it been confirmed that The Rock says he was going to save the WWE or save WrestleMania because of losing Punk and Brock. But it was still fine because there was other candidates for Seth Rollins, right? You had Gunther, which could have easily become the world champion. Easily. And he just ceremoniously dropped the Intercontinental title the day after. Easy money. Easy money. Drew McIntyre. There's a handful of people that could challenge Seth Rollins. Like it was not needed for The Rock to be there. But considering the fact WrestleMania has not happened yet, and considering that the negative press that WWE has dealt with because of Vince McMahon and Brock Lesnar and these allegations and Vince stepping down, you can't handle another set of negative press with fans shitting on WrestleMania for Philadelphia. And when you got one of the biggest movie stars in Hollywood shows up and they don't like it. So, you know, when you look at that, what's going on, Sherry Moscow? How are you doing today? It's nice seeing you. Nice seeing you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the love. So let's look at it dollars and cents wise. Before WrestleMania, before The Rock showed up, WrestleMania is sold out. It's already sold out. So The Rock ain't handling that. The Rock wasn't needed for that. What The Rock was needed for is for other viewership, like the other stuff, to make it bigger than what it already is. And I mean, it's by design that you're going to have the press conference during Super Bowl week. So you're trying to make it bigger than what it is. It's dollars and cents. But when fans start shitting on the original idea for Rock to come in for Cody, then that's negative press. You got to pivot now. WrestleMania ain't even started yet. You still need the viewership, right? You still need the retention. Even though those seats are sold out, like that stadium is sold out, the other part of it, they need that money. So they had to pivot. So it's going to be Cody and Roman. And they had to change because of that. Now, anything else happened after WrestleMania, they ain't going to give a shit. They're not going to give a shit at all. So with Cody facing Roman, I will say the pivot may lead to some movie-like endings in night 2 of WrestleMania. And here's what I'm getting at. Excuse me. So when Seth Rollins last night, he told Cody, I will be your shield. It's almost like Cody is getting his squad together without actually getting a squad together. So that leads to me thinking that you're going to be rocking Roman side by side at WrestleMania, and Cody and whoever's going to be by his side at WrestleMania. And that ending at night 2 is going to be cinema. So whatever original plan that they had with Cody, with Roman, with The Rock, this current trajectory is the better story now, because now people are involved. Now, people might say, hey, Erskmac, how do you know that they had to pivot? Like, how do you know this wasn't an original plan in the first place? Like WWE is pretending that it was their whole plan in the first place. Here's how I know. Cody never acknowledged the fact that he gave up his spot. He never explained why he gave up his spot. They kind of like glossed over it a little bit. That what makes you know. You got to pay, the devil's in the details. He never explained why he gave it up. He just said, hey, I'm taking my spot. Now, would that play in later? Maybe that may play in later, because The Rock being on the board, he may say, hey, bro, you gave up your spot to me. Only time will tell. Now, when you got Seth Rollins, and Sherry said Rock turn heel, and that's honestly the best option, honestly. You got Hollywood Rock, and we only got a little, like I said earlier in the show, you only got a little snippet of Hollywood Rock. Expand on Hollywood Rock a little bit. Let him be Like G Signature said, Dwayne Johnson / The Rock. Make that a little happy mix. Like have him talk cash cold shit like on any show besides WWE. Just have him talk trash. And just create that bigger ambiance. Just have him do that. But the one thing I'm concerned about with Cody and Seth is if they may be setting up a tag team match. And there's no reason for that tag team match. And I'm going to tell you why. Is Cody going to take the pin? No. Is Seth going to take the pin? Why? No. And on top of that, Seth is still injured. Now, honestly, there was some new news that broke that says in the next 3 to 4 weeks, he should be okay. But why would you risk that? Why would you risk a tag team match? And on top of that, The Rock is 50 years old. Plus, maybe. He's older. And are you going to risk injury in that reign for doing a tag team match that may not mean anything? And you know Roman is for damn sure not going to take a pin. He took one for his cousin. He's not going to take another one unless it's that one-on-one match, possibly with Cody. So if they are planning on a tag team match of some sort, I highly discourage that. I mean, who am I compared to WWE? But I would say that wouldn't be a good idea. And Sherry said, I'm really glad Rock going heel. I'm glad too because I feel like his best work is when he's a heel. Like, you know, you got the nice Rock and stuff like that. And honestly, it's not like the fans didn't want Rock versus Roman. They just didn't want Rock versus Roman at the expense of Cody. Because what are you telling your locker room? Are you telling your locker room, like, no matter how much hard work you put in for the year, somebody from the past can show up and take your spot whenever because they are more money, and sorry, but you know, those are breaks. But The Rock can play into that though. He can say, hey, I'm the people's champ. I'm the Hollywood Rock. I can do whatever the piss I want to. I can do all those things. And he has an axe to grind considering the mistake that was made. Rock can say, hey, you gave up your spot. That is my spot. So, like, you can wrestle me for that spot again, and whoever wins face Roman Reigns on night 2. You can do that. That is legitimate because we know Cody gave up his spot. That infamous, I'm coming for you, Roman, but not at Mania. So you just gave up your spot. And G Signature says that I think Rock will be the enforcer and Solo and Jim will be the goons. Now, something will irritate The Rock to make him make an executive decision for Roman to be without help. That's a possible outcome. Yes, that's a possible outcome. And Sherry says Hollywood Rock. Yeah, that is definitely a possible outcome. I think Rock came side by side with Roman because of what Cody said, even though he didn't say anything like totally disrespectful. But looking into that, there's going to be some cinema right here. This is going to be a movie. This is definitely going to be a movie. And then you can play into next year's main event, WrestleMania 41 with Rock and Roman. Now, the path is clear. The path is clear for that. But only time will tell, but the fact that we don't know what's next, maybe this was a blessing in disguise. Maybe that mistake that was made is a blessing in disguise because we really don't know what's going to happen. That, you know, at one point or another, before Rock was even in the picture, we knew Cody was going to face Roman eventually and finish his story. We knew that. We were following this man for a year. You know what I mean? We knew the trajectory. We knew the moment he won Royal Rumble who he was going to point at. He was going to point at Roman. But now, we really don't know the results of that. Is Cody really going to win at WrestleMania? And if he don't win at WrestleMania, I'm actually okay with that. And WWE will damn sure be okay with that because you know why? You already watched WrestleMania. You already paid your money. You already watched the show in its entirety. We already got you. Just be mad because we all know after WrestleMania, WWE kind of do a soft reset on things. Like they might do a draft later on down the line, or they might carry on like a new storyline or whatever the case may be. So they're trying to get all their ducks in a row to have WrestleMania kick off the ground the way they want it to get kicked off. They want it to be the biggest thing. They want to sell it to like the biggest audience possible, right? Because currently, right now, AEW All In currently holds the attendance record for actual people coming in, and WWE is set to break that record. So, and maybe they're advertising it to that degree, but we will see. But next on the list, we are talking about AEW Big Business is quickly approaching. And listen, I don't know, you may know or not know, because there's been speculations, there've been rumors, and the dirt sheets and everything else in between. But yes, Mercedes Moné has signed with AEW. If you haven't realized that already, Mercedes Moné is with AEW. And that is possibly one of the biggest signings for 2024 for Tony Khan. And like I said earlier in the show, Tony Khan needs to sign Scott D'More and give him a job to run that women's locker room, because, hey, man, that women's locker room is cooking lately. In 2024, they've been on TV a lot more than it was in 2023. And AEW Big Business is in Boston. Pre-sale. They already sold 5,000 tickets at pre-sale. Pre-sale. Not the actual sale of the tickets, but 5,000 tickets. All because Mercedes Moné may show up. Because Mercedes Moné is from Boston, correct? And if you pay attention to the graphic, it says Bosston. So Mercedes Moné will make that appearance. Now, obviously, she is a great boost in that women's locker room. You got Chris Statlander up in there. You got Willow Nightingale in there. You got Athena. And honestly, I give a good amount of credit to Athena in Ring of Honor, because she is currently the longest reigning Ring of Honor women's champion. And because of the phenomenal matches she has done, the long-term storytelling she's done in Ring of Honor, and to me, I feel like she carried Ring of Honor on her back. She put everyone on notice, including Tony Khan, because listen, we got to have more women on TV. Like, we got to have like 1 to 2 matches like per night, like for Dynamite and Collision. So I like where they're going with it, and I seem like there's a lot of focus into the women's locker room right now. Samoa Joe is the AEW World's Women's Champion, and Sherry Moscow says, "I'm so glad she chose AEW." I'm glad too, because let me tell you something. On Twitter, or X as they call it, I mean, of course, there's tribalism and everything else in between. And people was like, Mercedes Moné gonna show up the Royal Rumble, AEW people, cope AEW, da-da-da-da. Mercedes Moné didn't show up at the Royal Rumble. Jordan Grace did. But Mercedes Moné didn't show up the Royal Rumble. So at that point, you could hear a mouse piss on cotton. You couldn't see them. You couldn't find them on Twitter. It's like, damn, I was wrong. Yeah, sometimes you too loud. Maybe that's what it is. But I am so glad that she's going to AEW, because that AEW women's locker room is a great locker room. And considering the fact that AEW will offer her the freedom to go do movies and TV, and I think the key word with AEW is freedom. Like, you have freedom to go to other promotions and wrestle at other promotions at the behest of Tony Khan. Whereas with WWE, you do not have that said freedom. Like, you cannot go to New Japan. You cannot go to CMLL to do a match or two. You can't do a local wrestling show. You can't do none of those things. So with AEW, that is the selling point with them, is that you have freedom. Now, AEW hasn't been perfect all the way through. Like last year, it had a little bit of a lull, and they got away from the ranking system, and rumor has it that it was CM Punk's idea to get rid of that ranking system, but the ranking system is back, and they're going to a more sports-centric wrestling show, whereas your rankings matter. So depending on your win-loss record, you could challenge for these said championships. So what that tells me is that when Mercedes Moné shows up, she's going to be wrestling from the bottom. She's not going to get an automatic title shot. Yeah. And listen, Sherry says, Scott D'More go to AEW. I beg of you, go to AEW because, you know, I do love Mercedes Moné, but if you get Scott D'More, that's not your biggest signing. I'm sorry. If you get Mercedes Moné, which you do have Mercedes Moné would not be your biggest signing. Scott D'More would be. Because when you get Scott D'More, you get a good chunk of that TNA roster. And I was Sherry, I know you came in a little bit late to the show. This was my idea. Tony Khan hires Scott D'More, have him run the women's roster, have him run some of the stuff on the men's roster, but totally run Ring of Honor. Let that be his baby. Since Anthem want to be a dick out here and fire the man that everybody loves, let him run Ring of Honor too. Like 100% run Ring of Honor. Let that be his new baby. And I guarantee you, man, woo. So you got AEW. I'm just thinking of the possibilities here. You got AEW and Ring of Honor on TV. That's crazy. Wild stuff, man. Scott D'More on Ring of Honor. Tony Khan on AEW. Scott D'More is running the women's division on both Ring of Honor and AEW. Man, you talk about cooking. Everybody want to come through. And the one person I really want to come to AEW is Jordynne Grace. I really, really love Jordynne Grace. Like, she's doing her thing out there. She is doing her thing. And people got put on notice when she showed up at the Royal Rumble. They definitely got put on notice with that. And I already know WWE is salivating. They are licking their chops. They are ready to see Jordynne Grace. But wherever Scott D'More goes, I'm almost certain that Jordynne Grace and Moose and the majority of the TNA talent are going to follow suit. But I'm very excited about AEW Big Business. I'm even more excited about AEW Revolution, which is Sting's final match, and which is going to be a tag match. And let me tell you something. I have to give credit where credit is due. The way they treated Sting in AEW is the way he should have been treated in WWE. The one thing that he feared by going to WWE after WCW was absorbed is that, I'm going to have to start all the way over. And I'm not willing to do that. I'm not going to do that. And I think his fears came true because, hey, you lost at WrestleMania. You got injured against Seth Rollins by accident. And you didn't end your career like you wanted to. But with AEW getting treated so well, and he gets the send-off that he rightfully, truthfully deserved. And I'm here for it, man. Sting is my all-time favorite wrestler. My favorite wrestler. I mean, I know there may be better wrestlers out there, but Sting is definitely my favorite wrestler of all time. But you got Okada. Now, there's been some news and rumors circling that Okada is going to sign with AEW. I know he was bouncing back and forth with WWE and AEW. That is another thing, is that AEW is willing to let you stay where you're at. If you want to stay in Japan, stay in Japan. Like Will Ospreay. Let's run the tape. Will Ospreay, Mercedes Moné, possibly Okada, Jay White, already been signed, 6-man champion. They're doing some great things. And to the people and the trolls that's on Twitter, just appreciate wrestling. Just love wrestling. It's okay to love both products. It's okay to love all products. You know what I'm saying? Competition is key. Competition is great. I mean, we had a monopoly for like 20 plus years, and now that we have options, let's enjoy it. But check it. This is our show for tonight for Pro Wrestling Talk Live. Shout out to Sherry, a newest member of the Orange Phoenix Geek Corner. Do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button and a notification bell, because we will be back Thursday night at 7 p.m. for Nerd Talk Live for myself and Boogie Blends to talk about everything of geek culture, some anime news, some video game news, and everything else in between. Speaking of video games, if you are a gamer, you need to get Helldivers 2. That game is the bee's knees, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, myself and Vivo, Anime Breakdown, Solo Leveling, and Ninja Kamui. Tonight, Pro Wrestling Talk Live, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, is Nerd Talk Live with Boogie Blends. You guys Y'all stay blessed. Y'all have a awesome night. So until next time, peace.